There are many ways to leave your lover. One of them is dead. A woman facing rejection turns up the heat.
This thing is a powder keg, just waiting to explode.
A cheating wife plans a new life with her boy toy.
She has no heart. There's black in her veins, not blood.
And a young beauty snares the perfect husband, but wants more.
She's not a human being that the rest of us should have to spend time with on this planet.
Beer and bowls, two of Shelley Arndt's favorite things, along with her younger partner, Darcy Veeder.
Yeah. Sorry, boys. Better luck next time.
Darcy was a happy, mellow guy, a little bit of a jester, joker.
Shelley, 44, and Darcy, 37, are making a go of things in East Bremerton, Washington.
She seemed nice and, he seemed that happy. A mother is always happy to see that, his kid is going to finally get on with his life.
In 2013, the couple is living with Darcy's ailing father, with whom Shelley shares a passion: drinking.
Maybe take it easy, Dad.
Don't worry about me, son. I know my limits.
Leave your dad alone.
It's a juggle for a man who loves them both.
Darcy did everything he could to make his life better. For not only him, for those around him.
Darcy's caring personality earns him a fan. Shelley's twin sister, Kelly.
Shelley's family adored the guy. The guy was going to be really good for her.
He's so good with kids.
Kelly's hoping Darcy can help turn her sister's life around.
She's unable to maintain long-term relationships with a love, unable to hold a job, unable to control her behavior.
I wish you'd give me that kind of attention.
In many ways, the twins are opposites.
Seriously?
There was a lot of jealousy with her sister. Her sister was doing well, was married, had a family, had a career, and Shelley was struggling with her life.
Darcy works at a cleaning company, supporting the household, while Shelley looks after Darcy Sr. during the day.
Waiting to explode.
Darcy would be upset. They get in the house, they'd both be staggering.
Well, what's your problem?
Did you get Dad to his doctor's appointment?
No, I didn't. So what?
Shelley is one of those people that couldn't handle alcohol at all. It made her angry, abusive.
You're always starting something with me!
Stop it! Stop!
And all around nasty.
Come on! Enough!
Darcy has grounds to call the police, but he doesn't.
You're pathetic!
Stop! Stop it!
Instead, Shelley phones it in.
911, what's your emergency?
Police? I'd like to report an assault. My boyfriend beat me.
She made up wild stories.
Can you please come as soon as possible?
We had to go get him out of jail a couple times, bail him out, and he'd have big bruises on him.
But after each fight, they somehow patch it back together.
Here we go.
This is a good one, Mom.
I'm glad you like it, honey.
I think for her it was control.
Definitely. If she lost that control,
Darcy!
she would lose him.
Shelley tries to isolate Darcy from his own family, even his mother.
What's she doing here?
She's my mom.
To Shelley, his mother was a threat to her relationship with Darcy.
Whenever he did talk to his mother,
This is work, sorry.
Shelley would go into a rage. She hated it.
I told you, don't come here. You can't tell me what to do.
Evil. I think she was evil.
Darcy!
She was gonna punch me. She was like, I could feel her breath.
I'm telling you.
Hey, what are you doing?
It was horrible. The words that she would call my wife. C, the B, everything you could think of.
Darcy can't take it anymore. He sits down at the table and he decides, I'm gonna write Shelley a letter. This relationship is over. No more. And he gives it to her.
That's the most dangerous time. In relationships where one party has been violent is when they actually start to leave or their partner finds out they're going to leave. That's when the partner becomes desperate.
In East Bremerton, Washington, Shelley Arndt's violent outbursts have ruined her relationship. But Darcy Veeder hopes they can still be friends.
Come on, drink up. It's the weekend.
On February 21st, 2014, he accepts an invitation to meet Shelley at her sister's home.
Kels. Yeah? Can we crash here? Sure.
A casual drink turns into a spontaneous party.
All the adults were upstairs, and some of the children were about the house.
Get out there. Oh, yes!
Kelly quit drinking
Come in.
really soon in the evening.
Night, you two.
Hi, Mom.
The other three were beyond the ability to drive, but they continued drinking till the early hours of the morning.
Here you go.
Thank you.
So they all decide to stay the night
Sleep tight. Good night.
at Kelly's house. And this is gonna be a night that nobody forgets.
It's been a good night.
Yeah.
We could be happy.
Shelley, one night doesn't make a relationship.
Are you still leaving me?
Yeah.
Being rejected a second time is too much for Shelley.
She's in a rage. So she turns to the weapon that is the most deadly to her at this point, and that is a beanbag full of styrofoam. There were 6 other people in that house that night. So if her target was just Darcy Jr., she took a risk of killing 6 other people at the same time.
I think it was probably surprising to her how fast that particular material caught on fire.
As it continued to build, she had to do something.
The house is full of smoke. Come on.
Kelly went to bed at midnight, and the next thing she knew, her sister was coming into the room.
There's smoke coming up from downstairs. Come on.
Shelley should have been nominated for an Oscar. She made it look like she was a hero.
Kelly realized that her daughter was still downstairs in her bedroom. She and Shelley ran back, pounded on her door, got her out of there.
Shelley plays superhero and saves 5 people from burning to death. But she leaves one behind.
Shelley's a textbook case of a psychopath.
I gotta go back in.
She actually made it look like she was going to run back in the house to get Darcy.
You can't! You'll die!
At that point, the house was fully engulfed, and the windows were starting to blow out.
Between his intoxication and the effects of the smoke, he didn't make it out.
I couldn't believe it. I was by myself in the house, and I called Bill, and I lost it. It was a bad day.
It looks like a tragic accident. Until next morning, when Shelley arrives at Darcy's work.
This could have waited.
No, I wanted to. I wanted to sort things out as soon as possible.
She had come to his place of employment. She actually claimed to be his wife.
What was Darcy's retirement policy?
It was unbelievable. I mean, who in their right mind, a tragic thing like this, the first thing you think of is, oh, I gotta go turn his badge in.
And how much life insurance did he have?
Oh, I gotta check on his insurance and all that stuff. That ain't remorse.
And there's something suspicious in the room where the fire started. A beanbag chair had been moved.
What if somebody put one of those over there on the couch and lit it on fire? Could that be a competent ignition source?
Investigators reconstruct how they think the blaze started.
We lit that beanbag on fire, and it consumed the couch exactly like what we saw in the room.
And it's not long before investigators discover Shelley's past.
What Shelley forgot is that she had already served time for arson.
There's been times in her past she admitted that she became angry with Darcy, and she took an item, she lit it on fire, and she placed it on top of another item.
Psychopaths tend to not learn from their mistakes, and Shelley was no different.
In 2015, Shelley Arndt is convicted of aggravated first-degree murder, arson, and 6 counts of second-degree assault. One for each person who escaped the fire.
Shelley's completely evil, but to risk everyone's life, her entire family's life, was ruthless.
She is sentenced to life in prison, no parole.
He was my little Darcy. He was a good kid, very loving. He was the best.
Shelley Arndt destroyed a generous soul who only wanted to keep his family happy. Darcy provided her with a good life for little in return. But when he finally had enough, Shelley couldn't accept it.
This was a murder motivated by greed and sloth. Shelley didn't want to work, and she needed the money that Darcy earned. A person who could do this knows the difference between right and wrong and chooses to do wrong.
What about me?
And their soul is black.
2002, in the small village of Richhill in Northern Ireland, newcomer 30-year-old Jackie Crimble makes a big impression.
Ooh. She was very bold, she was very loud, she thrived on being the center of attention. Let's dance.
Inappropriate, daring, but that's the kind of person she was.
Let's go back to your place.
Jackie develops quite the reputation.
She's shameless. She didn't seem to care what people were really thinking about her.
One person who does care is Jackie's husband, Paul.
Oh, here we go. Drum roll.
Waiting at home with their 2 children.
Here we go. 5.
She's gone out every other weekend by herself. He's at home babysitting the kids and stuff.
Where's Mummy?
She'll be home soon.
They say opposites attract, and perhaps that's what was going on between Jackie and Paul.
An engineer in the aerospace industry, Paul works extra shifts.
Happy, but there was no keeping Jackie happy. There was never enough for Jackie.
Unlike her husband, Jackie's always looking for something better. And in July 2003, she bumps into 27-year-old Roger Ferguson.
Thanks.
No problem. Are you okay?
Jackie set her sights on Roger, and he had virtually no experience with women.
No. I've got to go home. But my husband beats me.
You can't go home then.
Roger believed everything she said.
I've got nowhere else to go.
Look, come with me. We'll work something out.
Roger was very quickly besotted by her. I think that she realized she'd found somebody that she could manipulate.
Unaware of his wife's nocturnal activity, is taken by Jackie.
Yeah, I mean...
Finally, a friend decides to tell him the truth.
No, I didn't know.
I'm sorry to be the one to tell you. I really am.
It's okay. Thanks for letting me know.
What's the matter with you?
Are you sleeping with Roger?
Sure am. I want out of this sham marriage.
When Jackie was confronted, she didn't lie. She said, yeah, and our marriage is over.
Don't say that. What about our kids?
But Paul doesn't want a divorce.
He didn't want to walk out and leave his 2 children with Jacqueline.
What about me?
Where are you off to now, huh? You off to see him?
Yeah, I am.
And when he told her he would never divorce her, he signed his own death warrant. "32-year-old Irish party girl Jackie Crimble
You're pathetic.
has big plans for the future, but they don't include her long-suffering husband, Paul.
A few times Jacqueline had said to Paul in front of people, "You're worth more."
Hopes improve with every drink.
My favorite.
I know.
Paul got quite a surprise when he got home, but it wasn't a Father's Day present.
And both Jacqueline and Roger just kept kicking him as he was lying on the ground. Kicking him, and kicking him.
Paul couldn't believe what was happening to him. He knew that his wife had betrayed him, realized he'd been caught in a trap. And when the bag was placed over his head, he began to panic.
Not only did she put the plastic bag around his head, she sat there and watched him.
It would have taken a number of minutes, It was a terrible way to die.
Jackie's planned the murder down to the last minute. Now for the cover-up.
They put Paul's body in the boot of his car. The car was driven to a remote location and was just left there. And then Jacqueline staged what looked like a burglary in the house. You know, knocked a number of things over, knocked the phone off the table. She was tied up with cable ties then as well.
The stage is set for the performance of her life.
She creates a story about contacting 999 on her phone. That's kind of hard to believe.
Help me, please! 2 men came in. There's been a robbery. 2 men came in. They were shouting about money and...
Only Jackie's hands were tied behind her back, but she could still walk.
Jackie Crimble!
Why didn't she just walk out the front door and go to a neighbor's?
They had masks on. They took my husband. I don't know where they've gone. No.
Jacqueline, at the start of it, sounded absolutely hysterical. Then there's a point where she thought that she had hung the phone up, and she immediately stopped crying. And she heard them saying, "Hello, are you still there?"
Mom, are you there? Oh, please, come and help me! Help me! Oh, no.
When she realized the operator was still there, she gasped and then went hysterical again.
Oh, help me! Please, help me! Help me!
And that's where the whole case fell down.
Jackie may have been good at something, but it wasn't acting.
The police easily connect the dots. The unlikely crime scene, a life insurance policy, and a young lover waiting in the wings.
Stupid people, they don't see how stupid they are, and their weakness is thinking that they're smarter than others. And that's power through and through, you know.
In 2007, Roger Ferguson is convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison with an 18-year non-parole period.
Roger was an otherwise good person who had been turned into a killer by being besotted by a woman. He has just completely fallen under her spell.
Jackie Crimble is found guilty of murder and jailed for life with a 20-year non-parole period.
I've never come across anyone like Jacqueline Crimble. She is so manipulative, so cruel, so callous.
She has no heart. There's black in her veins, not blood. She felt no shame, no remorse, no guilt. Thank God she was also stupid, so she got caught very quickly. The Eternal Bliss machine stopped working rather early. She pretended to cry, she pretended to sob.
They're killing him!
It was a very unusual finish to a terrible crime.
Oh, no!
Look at me!
I'm so sorry.
Lisa was very single-minded. She would laser lock on something and she would go for it without a doubt, and like a heat-seeking missile.
I'm gonna marry you, Andy Segota.
Lisa is just where she wants to be.
He must have felt like I won the relationship lottery. She's really, really hot, and she picked me.
Leave it.
It could be important.
More important than me.
Lisa has their whole life mapped out, and it doesn't include Andy's family.
It was probably Mom. She's hoping we'll come visit this weekend.
I've got an assignment due.
I want to meet you, honey.
They were inseparable to the exclusion of everyone else.
I just want to be with you. Alone.
But Lisa wanted to be the only one in Andy's life.
Within months, they are married and start building their life together.
He was very much in love with her, I thought, which was okay for me. You know, I would accept her too, if that's what he wanted.
But it means Andy has to make some choices.
Hello? Oh, hey, sis. Yeah, sure. See you soon.
I was actually over to his apartment twice and only let in once.
She's just getting the vacuum cleaner.
She's not coming in.
Sue felt that Lisa was deliberately trying to come between the sibling bond that they had.
Hey, sis. I'll, carry it to the car.
She started noticing her brother Andy pulling away from her. She thought it was odd.
Andy isn't just being quarantined from family. He's struggling to keep Lisa happy day to day.
Ugh, I'm starving. No!
What?
Are you a complete idiot?
Lisa had gone absolutely nuclear when he'd emptied the dishwasher wrongly.
I hate you!
So she took all the dishes out of the cupboard and threw them at him.
Nine months after their wedding, the honeymoon is well and truly over.
How bad is it?
I said, how you do? And he goes, wow, not great.
You've got to divorce her before it gets worse.
I can't get a divorce. He was in love with his wife, and he thought that they could work things out, and he didn't want a divorce.
Andy does agree to a trial separation. But that's not what Lisa wants. She wants someone new.
She started revising her future, and it didn't include Andy.
No prospects in terms of money.
Lisa decides after a couple of months to go back with Andy.
Oh, I love it.
And she knew she could get him back.
You spoil me.
He's really trying hard to make the marriage work. He's trying everything he can do to accommodate Lisa.
I'm just so glad you're back.
But there's something she's not telling.
Although Lisa went back with Andy at her insistence, she never gave up David.
As always, Lisa has her man right where she wants him. On the night of March 30th, 1981, it all comes together.
She told Andy she had a paper due in one of her psychology classes.
And would he take her to his office so that she could use the typewriter at his office to type the paper?
Sorry, this must be really boring for you.
Hey, if it means spending more time with you, babe, I'm in.
Well, it means a lot. I really need those credits.
What she ended up typing, she simply was copying from a psychology book.
Right. Done.
Andy's first mistake is to trust his wife.
Lisa, I'm so glad you're back.
So am I.
His second having life insurance.
Hey, stop! Run! Run!
Andy tells Lisa to run. His first thought is for her safety.
They're attacking my husband! They're killing him!
Well, she ended up at a nearby convenience store.
Just tells him that her husband is being attacked by two guys.
911, what's your emergency?
Give me the police, please.
He was straddling Andy and violently stabbing time after time after time.
After 44 blows with a Bowie knife, the assailant screws up.
He missed on one occasion and he stabbed himself. It was a big knife, and the stab wound to the leg happened to sever the artery.
Now, there are two victims.
He's bleeding out. He's going to die there if he doesn't get assistance.
She runs up to Andy. Oh, Andy, Andy.
Oh, no! Andy!
But soon Lisa has more to worry about.
Lisa!
When she saw David, she clearly did not expect that.
Andy!
Lisa might as well written and signed her own confession for the way she acted at the death scene.
The whole thing was just a complete fail.
Lisa's lover is exposed as the killer before the police even arrive.
The damage was so severe that they couldn't save the leg, so they amputated the leg above the knee.
So now, the million-dollar question. Was the killer eliminating his competition, or was he put up to it?
I do know David. We had an affair.
She starts to throw David under the bus.
I dumped him. I went back to my husband.
She made up the story that David was a jilted lover, and when she told him that she no longer wanted to be with him, so he decided to kill her husband.
He's been stalking me.
It's a convincing argument until good police work traces the origin of the murder weapon.
The salesperson who sold them the knife remembered the two of them, and Lisa actually paid for the knife. David didn't.
In 1982, David Meade is found guilty of second-degree murder. He is sentenced to 12 years.
I don't think he would have even thought of this if it wasn't that he was wanting her in that way. He must have been mesmerized by her and what he believed he was going to have with her.
Lisa Sagata is also convicted of second-degree murder and solicitation to commit murder. She receives 16 years.
She still, who knows what we could have had with him. Probably a wonderful grandfather and brother that would always be there for us. If she wasn't in the picture, he'd be so present and so happy. She took him away from us.
With good behavior, Lisa serves only half her sentence. But with freedom comes more punishment.
Justice can be served in many ways. Lisa died 2 years after leaving prison of causes unknown.
I think it's just a good thing that she's dead. She's not a human being that the rest of us should have to spend time with on this planet.
These deadly women lost that loving feeling.
At 4:17 a.m., the sirens stop, and the silence that follows is heavier than the concrete that splits the city in two. A silence that presses against windows and lungs, and the idea that someone somewhere has just vanished without a sound. The report is brief, almost careless, a name typed wrong, a time stamped late, a border checkpoint mentioned without emotion, and then the file begins to breathe slow and shallow, waiting for the years to pass. East Berlin, winter biting hard, the wall standing like a verdict, and a young man who leaves his apartment with a scarf looped twice around his neck and never returns. Cold case is not a term they use yet, not out loud, not in a city where nothing is supposed to be cold, where everything is watched, catalogued, controlled, but the cold settles anyway into stairwells and files and memories, and it does not leave. The street outside his building is narrow, slick with ice, the lamps casting a jaundiced glow that makes every shadow look guilty. Neighbors hear nothing unusual. Or they hear too much and choose one detail to remember because it sounds safer than the rest. A door closes. Footsteps. A car idling longer than it should. He is 26, works nights repairing radio equipment, the kind of job that puts him in contact with voices he never sees and signals that cross borders without passports. The police note this with a pencil mark in the margin. Interesting. Potentially dangerous. Potentially useful. The word potentially hangs there, unresolved, like the case itself will one day be. By morning, the apartment is sealed. The bed is unmade. The kettle is cold. His papers are stacked neatly, as if tidiness might protect them. There is no sign of a struggle, which is immediately suspicious. In a city trained to see struggle everywhere, its absence feels staged. A roommate mentions he was anxious lately, checking the window more often, lowering his voice when the radio crackled. Another says he talked about crossing, about the West, about music that wasn't censored, about air that felt lighter. The statements contradict each other just enough to blur the picture, and the blur is convenient. Files are opened. Files are copied. Files are filed away. At the checkpoint nearest his last known route, the guard on duty remembers nothing, then remembers a man who looked like many men, then remembers a coat that might have been blue. The logbook shows no irregularities. Never does. Cameras exist, but not in the way people imagine later, not everywhere, not always working, not always saved. A reel is requested. A reel is missing. Another reel shows static and snow. Winter again, even on film. Someone suggests he ran. Someone suggests he was taken. Someone suggests he never intended to cross at all. The case splits into theories the way the city splits into zones, each defended fiercely, none admitting the other might be right. Days pass, then weeks, and the family begins to ask questions that sound dangerous. Where is he? Why hasn't anyone told us anything new? Why was his apartment searched twice? The answers are soft and circular. The answers say patience. The answers say procedure. The answers say there are more important matters. The file thickens with paper but not with truth. A label is added in red, then crossed out, then added again. Suspected illegal border activity. The words feel final, like a sentence passed in a room he never entered. The community feels it first as a rumor, then as a tightening. People stop walking together at night. Radios are turned down. Conversations change subject when someone new enters the room. A missing person in a city of missing freedoms becomes a mirror no one wants to look into. Posters go up and come down quickly. Faces on paper attract the wrong kind of attention. The family is advised to stop. Advised is a polite word for ordered. The mother keeps one poster folded in her coat, touching it like a talisman when she crosses the square. Months later, a body is found in the Spree, pulled from the water near a bend where the current slows and secrets like to collect. For a moment, the city holds its breath. The description is close but not exact. The height is wrong. The dental records don't match. The code is different. Relief and dread arrive together, indistinguishable. The file remains open, then half open, then something in between. Cold case is whispered now in hallways, in kitchens, in places where whispers feel safer than truth. Years grind forward. The wall becomes older, more familiar, more monstrous in its normalcy. The missing man becomes a story told carefully, details smoothed to avoid sharp edges. Investigators are reassigned. A new officer reads the file and frowns at the margins, at the pencil marks that mean more than the ink. He notices a discrepancy in the timestamp. He notices a witness statement altered with a different hand. He asks questions that echo unanswered. He is told the case is sensitive. He is told the case is closed. Closed is a flexible word. It can mean finished. It can mean buried. Then history lurches. The wall falls, not with a scream but with confusion, with people climbing and laughing and crying, with cameras everywhere this time, with concrete chipped away by hands that shake. Files are opened in basements that smell like dust and fear. Names are cross-referenced. Old secrets breathe again. The missing man's file is pulled, heavier now with the weight of neglect. A stamp appears on the cover years after it should have. Closed. The reason is thin. Presumed defected. Presumed life elsewhere. Presumed not our problem anymore. The family receives a letter that reads like a form because it is one. The mother reads it twice and understands nothing, except that the city has decided to forget. But forgetting leaves residue. Decades later, a box is found during renovations of an office that no longer exists. Inside, reels of film mislabeled, a notebook with dates that don't align, a badge number that belonged to a man who retired quietly and moved south. The new evidence does not shout. It whispers. It shows a figure at a checkpoint at 4:12 a.m., not 4:17. It shows a scarf looped twice. It shows a pause where there should be none. The guard looks up, not at the man but past him, toward a shadow that doesn't resolve on camera. The reel cuts. Static. Snow. A journalist gets wind of it. Cold case. Berlin Wall era. Closed. The headline writes itself sharp and irresistible. New evidence rewrites history. The phrase feels dramatic, but the reality is smaller and crueler. The evidence doesn't rewrite. It smudges. Suggests. It implies that the official story was convenient, that the truth was heavier than concrete and easier to sink. Names are mentioned again carefully. A retired official declines to comment. Another says memory is unreliable. A third says the past should remain where it is. The community reacts the way it always does, with a mix of hunger and fear. People want answers but not consequences. They share the clip, freeze-frame the shadow, argue about pixels and angles. The family is contacted gently, too gently. The mother is gone now. A sister listens and feels the old tightening return. She remembers the scarf. She remembers the way he checked the window. She remembers nothing that helps. The case is reopened in spirit if not in law. A task force is mentioned then unmentioned. A press conference is scheduled then delayed. The word cold case is said out loud now, without flinching, as if naming it might finally thaw something. But cold cases don't thaw. They crack. They splinter. They leave edges. And somewhere between the footage and the file, between the city that was and the city that is, the missing man remains exactly that, missing, suspended in a moment measured by a faulty clock at a checkpoint that no longer exists, his last step caught on grainy film that refuses to explain itself. The case is called closed because history likes clean lines, but the evidence tells a different story, one that does not end, one that hums like a radio tune just off the signal, a voice almost there, asking a question the city still cannot answer, not yet, not here, not in the cold. The footage does not circulate at first, not really, not in full, only as descriptions that grow teeth as they travel, a pause too long, a shadow too deliberate, a guard whose eyes flick away at the wrong moment, and the city, now stitched back together but still scarred, leans in as if listening for an old wound to speak. Archivists argue about provenance. Lawyers argue about access. Editors argue about timing. Everyone agrees on one thing. Once the image is seen, it cannot be unseen because it doesn't answer questions, it rearranges them. Cold case becomes a keyword again. Dragged from the basement into daylight. And daylight proves harsher than memory. The checkpoint in question is gone, replaced by glass and steel and a cafe that serves oat milk lattes to tourists who pose where rifles once rested. But the geometry remains if you know how to look, the angles of control etched into the ground plan, the way lines once funneled bodies into compliance. Investigators return there with printouts and tablets, pacing the space, counting steps, matching shadows to sun angles calculated decades too late. At 4:12 a.m. the sun is nowhere, but sodium lamps lie and lie consistently. The scarf on the man in the footage reflects light in a way that suggests wool, thick, looped twice, exactly as the sister remembers. Exactly as the file once noted and then crossed out. A retired guard is located in a town near the Baltic, his hands still steady when he pours coffee, his voice practiced in the art of saying nothing. He remembers the winter as cold. He remembers many men. He remembers procedure. When shown the still frame, he squints and says it could be anyone. He says the logs were accurate. He says if something had happened, it would have been recorded. He says history is cruel to ordinary people. The interviewer hears the rhythm of a prepared defense and notes it without comment. Outside, the wind off the water smells like rust. The notebook found with the reels becomes the axis on which everything turns. Its pages are numbered irregularly, dates skipping forward and back as if time itself were unsure. A badge number appears 3 times, always next to the same hour. For 12. The ink pressure changes, lighter where the writer hesitated, heavier where he pressed through doubt. A name is abbreviated, a nickname perhaps, common enough to disappear in a crowd. Analysts compare handwriting to known samples and come up with probabilities that feel obscene given the stakes. 92%. 88. The numbers comfort no one. A second witness surfaces unprompted or claims to be. He is older now, slower, his sentences looping like a record with a scratch. He says he was driving a delivery van that night, that he waited longer than usual at the checkpoint, that he saw a man pulled aside, not violently, not loudly, just enough to register as wrong. He says another vehicle arrived without lights. He says he was waved through and did what people did then. He did not look back. His statement is both invaluable and impossible. Memory eroded by time, sharpened by regret. The investigators take it anyway. Cold cases live on maybes. Pressure builds. A senator calls for transparency. A union calls for restraint. Former officials publish op-eds warning against retroactive justice. The family is invited to a closed-door briefing that offers empathy but no clarity. The sister asks one question and does not raise her voice. Where did he go after the camera cut? The answer is procedural. The answer is legal. The answer is empty. She leaves with the feeling that the city is still better at walls than at doors. A forensic team enhances the footage using tools that did not exist when the wall did. Frames are interpolated, noise reduced, contrast pushed until artifacts bloom like bruises. The shadow gains edges, then loses them. At one point it resembles a man in a cap. At another, a trick of light. Experts argue. Comment sections erupt. Someone posts a side-by-side with a known officer from that era. The resemblance is compelling until it isn't. The internet solves and unsolves the case 1,000 times before lunch. Meanwhile, a ledger surfaces in a private collection, purchased years ago at auction for its leather binding. Inside, transport schedules marked with codes that match nothing until someone notices the repetition. The way certain routes are never listed but always implied. A historian recognizes the shorthand. Special handling. Unregistered transfer. The implication lands with a dull thud. If the man was moved, it was not across the wall in the way stories prefer. It was sideways into a system designed to erase without spectacle. The phrase closed begins to feel accusatory. Who closed it? On what grounds? With whose consent? A former clerk admits off the record that closures were sometimes preventative, a way to quiet families, to clear desks, to move on. She remembers stamping files with a weight that felt heavier than her hand. She remembers one file in particular that resisted, papers curling as if rejecting the mark. She remembers the scarf because it was mentioned in a memo that should not have mentioned it at all. A site visit to an abandoned facility yields nothing tangible and everything else. The walls are stripped. The floors are poured over. The air is wrong. A technician finds a drain that leads nowhere it should. Ground-penetrating radar suggests disturbances beneath a newer slab. Permission is requested. Permission is delayed. A journalist publishes anyway, careful with language, reckless with implication. The headline hits harder than the facts. Cold case reopened. Evidence points inward. History rewritten. The city winces. At a panel discussion, a philosopher says societies prefer closure to truth because closure allows sleep. An activist counters that sleep built on lies is a kind of death. A former prosecutor says evidence must meet standards. The sister watches from the back and thinks of standards that mattered then and did not protect her brother. She thinks of the scarf still folded in a drawer, fibers thinning with time, holding warmth that has nowhere to go. A breakthrough is announced and then qualified. Chemical analysis of residue on the real canister matches a compound used in a specific building, one not officially linked to border operations. It is a small thing, the kind of detail that excites experts and bores everyone else, but small things move cold cases. The building is traced. Records are partial. A maintenance log lists a shutdown at 4:30 a.m. the same day. Power fluctuations. Nothing unusual. Everything unusual. Interviews resume. Old men sit straighter when questions circle closer. One breaks, not with confession but with resentment, anger at a past that refuses to stay buried. He says orders came from above and from nowhere, that ambiguity was the point, that plausible deniability kept the machine oiled. He says some people were taken to be taught lessons others could learn without seeing. He stops short of names. He stops short of places. He stops short of relief. The case file grows again, this time in digital layers, hyperlinks replacing staples, but the weight returns, pressing on desks, on throats. A prosecutor hints at charges, then walks it back. Statutes. Jurisdiction. The dead hand of time. The word cold case is used less now, replaced by phrases that suggest motion without commitment. Ongoing review. Historical inquiry. Truth commission. Each one a way of touching the wound without reopening it. Late one night, an intern replays the footage at half speed and notices something everyone else missed. A reflexive movement. A guard's hand brushing a radio at the exact moment the shadow aligns. Audio is enhanced. Beneath the hiss, a syllable. A call sign. It matches the badge number in the notebook. The room goes quiet in that way that means something irreversible has happened. The next morning the story changes again. Not solved. Not closed. Rewritten perhaps, but in pencil, subject to erasure. The city holds its breath the way it did decades ago. Sirens distant, silence heavy, and somewhere in the spaces between glass and concrete, between memory and proof, the missing man remains present by his absence. The cold case refusing the comfort of an ending, insisting instead on the harder work of listening to what the silence has been saying all along. The syllable changes everything and nothing at once, a sound so small it could be dismissed if it didn't land with the precision of a fingerprint, a call sign murmured into a radio at the exact second a life appears to veer off course, and the investigators who hear it understand the danger immediately, because sounds can be argued but patterns are harder to bury. The badge number links to a unit that officially never operated at that checkpoint, a bureaucratic ghost whose existence was denied so often it began to feel real only through repetition. Cold case becomes something sharper now, less nostalgic, less safe, and the word unsettles people who believe time had granted them immunity. A list circulates quietly, names match to call signs. Roles reduced to verbs that sound neutral until they don't. Escort, transfer, receive. Some of the men are dead. Some are frail. Some are alive enough to feel the walls closing in again. One name stands out because it appears nowhere it should and everywhere it shouldn't. A mid-level officer whose career arc flattened inexplicably in the late 80s, promotions stalled, then resumed after reunification as if nothing had happened. He agrees to an interview on the condition that it be on background, a condition everyone knows is temporary. He says he remembers the night because of the cold, because the radio malfunctioned, because procedures were changing faster than people could adapt. He says he never laid hands on anyone. He says that matters. The sister listens to the audio and recognizes the cadence of evasion, the way sentences are built to collapse inward. She notices what he doesn't say. He never says the man crossed. He never says the man returned home. He never says the man lived. She asks for access to the full file, and is granted a sanitized version that feels like an insult dressed as courtesy. Pages are missing. Attachments referenced but absent. The gaps speak louder than the text, and she begins to understand that the case was never just about her brother, that it was a rehearsal for forgetting. A second tape emerges from a private archive, mislabeled as routine training footage. It shows the interior of a transport vehicle, the camera pointed at nothing in particular, sound distorted by engine noise. At 4:29 a.m., a figure enters the frame briefly, face obscured, scarf visible, looped twice. The image lasts less than a second, but it detonates across the investigation like a flare. Experts argue authenticity. Skeptics say pareidolia. The sister says she knows her brother's walk, the way he leans forward slightly, as if against a wind that isn't there. She has been waiting decades to say that sentence out loud. The vehicle's route is reconstructed using fragments of logs and maintenance schedules that were never meant to align. It leads not west but inward to a facility whose name changed 3 times in as many years, a place that trained people to listen and to make others talk. Officially, detainees didn't stay there long. Officially, no one disappeared there. Officially, records were meticulous. In reality, a former nurse remembers treating frostbite on wrists, remembers men who refused blankets because they were afraid to accept kindness. She remembers a radio repairman who spoke softly and asked about music. She remembers him leaving one morning and never coming back. Her testimony is devastating and fragile. Memory braided with guilt, details sharp where they hurt most. She describes a scarf folded on a chair, looped twice, as if the owner intended to return. She describes a conversation cut short by an officer who didn't like questions. She describes a night when the power went out briefly and everyone stood still, listening, as if the building itself were holding its breath. The investigators record everything, aware that recollection is not evidence until it is, that cold cases often turn on voices society trained itself not to hear. The legal obstacles harden. Statutes of limitation loom like cliffs. Jurisdiction tangles with sovereignty long since dissolved. A prosecutor admits privately that the case may never see a courtroom, that truth and justice do not always share a schedule. The journalist publishes again, careful now, methodical, letting documents speak in their own flat tones. The public reacts in waves, outrage cresting and receding as other headlines intrude. But the case holds because it has learned how to haunt. An unexpected ally appears in the form of a data scientist who specializes in pattern recognition across degraded archives. She feeds in radio logs, transport schedules, weather reports, even power grid fluctuations, and finds correlations that suggest choreography, not chaos. The night in question lights up across systems that should not have been synchronized. It looks planned. It looks intentional. It looks like a machine doing what machines do when told to erase a problem. A former official breaks ranks and releases a memo long rumored but never seen. Its language bloodless and precise. It outlines a pilot program for containment beyond border protocols, a phrase that means nothing until you read it twice. The dates align. The signatures are real. The approval chain is intact. The room where the memo is first read falls into a silence that feels ceremonial, as if acknowledging a truth requires a pause to absorb the cost. The sister receives a call late at night from a man who says he was held briefly at the same facility weeks later. He says he shared a cell with a radio technician who hummed to keep track of time. He says the man spoke about fixing things, about how signals degrade over distance. He says one morning the technician was gone and the guards pretended he had never existed. The caller apologizes for waiting so long. The apology lands like a weight, heavy and useless and necessary. Cold case, reopened, now becomes something else. A mirror held up to a past that refuses to stay past. Commissions are proposed. Museums request artifacts. The scarf is photographed and catalogued, its fibers analyzed, its wear patterns mapped. It smells faintly of dust and wool and the hands that folded it last. The sister holds it once more before handing it over, and feels the familiar tightening ease just enough to hurt. In a televised address, a government spokesperson acknowledges historical wrongs without naming them. The words are careful, calibrated to soothe without conceding. Activists respond with names and dates and places. The city watches itself being argued into existence again. The phrase "new evidence rewrites history" circulates, challenged by those who say history was always written this way, in margins and omissions, waiting for someone to read it closely. A final piece falls into place when the call sign from the footage is matched to a training manual that specifies response protocols during equipment failures. One line stands out, underlined by an unknown hand. Maintain continuity. Do not improvise. The implication is brutal. What happened that night was not a mistake. It was the system working as designed. The case inches toward a conclusion that is not an ending. Charges may never be filed. Bodies may never be found. But the story, once closed by decree, refuses to stay shut. It seeps into classrooms and cafes, into the spaces where walls once stood, into conversations that begin with disbelief and end with recognition. And somewhere in that recognition, the missing man takes shape again, not as a rumor or a headline, but as a presence that demands to be accounted for, a voice in the static that grows clearer the longer the city is willing to listen. The recognition changes how the city sounds: traffic louder, footsteps sharper, conversations edged with a vigilance people thought they'd outgrown. And in that sharpened noise the case advances not with a breakthrough but with accumulation, detail stacking on detail until denial becomes impractical. A review board is convened under a name designed to calm markets and allies, its mandate narrow on paper and vast in implication. They begin with procedures because procedures are safer than people, and quickly discover that the procedures of that era were written to create space, legal space, moral space, where things could happen without names attaching to them. A warehouse of records is open to the board under supervision that feels ceremonial rather than restrictive. Boxes breathe out dust and the faint smell of old glue. Many are empty, their contents transferred long ago. Destinations marked with codes that no longer resolve. Others are heavy with paper that says nothing directly and everything obliquely. Repeated phrases appear like a chorus. Special handling, temporary custody, administrative delay. The night of the disappearance repeats across unrelated files, a gravitational center pulling small anomalies into alignment. Cold case ceases to feel cold, it feels active, volatile. A statistician on the board notices something unsettling in the absence itself. A cluster of missing files corresponding to a handful of nights with similar weather, similar staffing levels, similar power fluctuations. She maps the absences and finds a shape that mirrors transport routes no one was supposed to acknowledge. The finding is met with silence, then with questions asked too late. How many? How often? Why? The answers resist quantification, because erasure rarely leaves clean edges. The sister is invited to testify, not as evidence but as context, a word that reduces grief to atmosphere. She speaks anyway, measured, precise, refusing to perform pain. She describes her brother's hands, how they moved with care around delicate components, how he believed that broken things could be fixed if you listened closely enough. She describes the scarf again, not as an object but as a habit, looped twice because winter winds cut through streets like knives. The room listens, and in listening understands that the case has always been about the collision between habit and machinery. A retired archivist breaks protocol and brings in a personal index she kept for herself, a map of where things went when they were told to go nowhere. It is meticulous and damning, cross-referencing code names with real ones, facilities with innocuous addresses, nights with numbers that recur like a pulse. One entry stands out, annotated with a small mark that means problem. The problem corresponds to the missing man. The archivist says she marked it because the transfer order came twice, once to receive, once to release, and the release never happened. She says she waited for a correction that never arrived. Outside the boardroom, protests grow sharper, signs replacing slogans with specifics, dates and call signs printed in block letters that refuse to blur. Counter-protests appear too, warning against witch hunts, against judging the past by present standards. The city holds both impulses at once, the desire to know and the fear of knowing too much. Police presence increases, a reminder that order is always one bad night away from becoming something else. A former driver is located in a care facility, his memory unreliable until it isn't. He recalls a route he hated because it required waiting at a gate that opened only after a delay long enough to feel intentional. He recalls a passenger who asked about music, about whether the radio picked up stations from far away. He recalls a scarf left on the seat after the passenger was taken inside. He recalls being told to forget the route, and doing so until the forgetting itself became a burden. His testimony is recorded with care, knowing that truth in cold cases often arrives compromised, and must be handled gently to avoid shattering. Technical experts reconstruct the transport vehicle from partial schematics, identifying a compartment not listed in official diagrams, sound-dampened, unventilated for long periods. The implications are clinical and horrifying. A medical consultant explains the effects of hypothermia in such conditions, how consciousness slips, how time distorts, how voices might sound far away. The sister closes her eyes and imagines her brother counting seconds by humming, the way another witness described, and the image lodges where it cannot be removed. The board requests access to a secure archive rumored to contain internal communications from the unit linked to the call sign. Access is denied, then partially granted, then rescinded after a leak is suspected. The leak turns out to be banal, a misaddressed email, but the damage is done. Trust evaporates. A board member resigns publicly, citing interference. The resignation letter goes viral, quoted selectively, its cautions turned into accusations by those eager for spectacle. Meanwhile, the journalist uncovers financial records indicating post-reunification payments to individuals associated with the unit, framed as pensions but structured like hush money, irregular and opaque. Experts debate the legality. the moral clarity is sharper. Someone wanted the past to remain cooperative. Someone paid for silence. The story shifts from a singular disappearance to a pattern of maintenance, the cost of keeping a narrative intact. In a quiet moment, the sister visits the checkpoint-turned-cafe again, standing where the camera once watched. She times the walk from curb to barrier, imagines the pause, the glance, the hand brushing a radio. Tourists pass unaware, their laughter a reminder that history rarely announces itself where it stands. She leaves without ordering anything, the taste of milk and foam suddenly intolerable. A memorandum from the review board leaks in full, its language stripped of euphemism by an editor who understands impact. It concludes that the disappearance likely resulted from a sanctioned operation that exceeded its own safeguards, an admission that feels both monumental and insufficient. Likely, sanctioned, exceeded, words designed to limit damage even as they acknowledge it. The public reaction is swift and fragmented. Some feel vindicated, others feel betrayed, many feel tired. The prosecutor speaks again, careful as ever, acknowledging the findings while emphasizing the challenges ahead. No bodies, deceased suspects, jurisdictional fog. The sister listens and hears the old rhythm return, the cadence of delay. But something has shifted. The case is no longer alone. It has joined others, a constellation of stories once isolated now seen together, revealing a sky that looks different once you know how to read it. Late one evening, a technician finds a mislabeled audio cassette in a box of duplicates. Its label handwritten, faded. The tape is damaged but playable. On it, a voice recites a checklist, pauses, then says almost to itself, maintain continuity. A second voice responds with a call sign. The timestamp is wrong. Everything else is not. The tape ends abruptly, as if cut mid-breath. The board reconvenes in emergency session. The sister is called and told only that something new has emerged, something that complicates timelines further. She sits in her kitchen, the scarf absent now, catalogued and distant, and waits for a city that has learned too late that closure is not an act but a process, one that demands patience, honesty, and a willingness to sit with what cannot be fixed. Outside, the night settles, not silent but listening, as the cold case presses forward, insisting on being carried to whatever end remains possible. The tape refuses to behave like evidence, stretching and contracting under scrutiny. It's his swallowing syllables until engineers coax meaning from the noise, and when meaning emerges it does so reluctantly, a phrase here, a confirmation there, enough to anchor timelines that were drifting, not enough to provide comfort. The call sign matches again. The checklist aligns with the manual. The pause lands exactly where a decision would have been made. Maintain continuity. The words sound administrative until you understand they were used to justify a disappearance. The emergency session becomes a marathon. Board members argue over language while analysts argue over seconds. The tape's timestamp is wrong by 11 minutes, a discrepancy that mirrors the camera log, a symmetry too precise to be coincidence. Someone suggests clock drift. Someone suggests manipulation. Someone suggests both. The conclusion inches forward regardless. Multiple systems were offset in the same direction, creating a pocket of time where actions could occur without immediate record. A deliberate blind spot. A design choice. A former systems engineer is tracked down through pension records, and a hobby forum devoted to restoring vintage radios. He is proud of his work of keeping old signals alive, and that pride loosens his tongue. He explains how redundancy was built to fail gracefully, how delays could be introduced to smooth operations. He smiles when he says it, then stops smiling when he realizes what smoothing meant on that night. He admits adjustments were requested from above, framed as tests. He admits he never asked why. He admits he suspected and told himself suspicion was not proof. The sister attends another briefing, this one heavier, the air dense with the awareness that explanations are finally converging. She listens to diagrams become narratives, to nodes and delays translate into footsteps and pauses. She hears her brother's last known movements described with the detachment of science and the intimacy of reconstruction. When asked if she has questions, she says only one thing. Who gave the order? The room does not answer her. Outside, the city organizes itself around the case. Walking tours that trace vanished routes. Teach-ins that translate bureaucracy into human cost. A mural appears overnight near the old checkpoint, abstract shapes resolving into a scarf caught mid-motion. It is painted over within hours, then repainted, then protected by a ring of candles. The act becomes ritual, a way of insisting that memory, once public, resists erasure. The review board's mandate expands under pressure, its narrow language quietly amended to include associated operations. That phrase opens doors that had been considered sealed by time. A regional archive releases correspondence hinting at interagency coordination, meetings scheduled off-calendar, notes taken by hand to avoid duplication. One memo includes a margin note in a cramped script. Keep it clean. The phrase circulates, its meaning argued, its tone unmistakable. A pathologist contributes a report based on the transport conditions, careful to emphasize probabilities. Hypothermia, stress, dehydration. The timeline suggests survival for hours, perhaps longer, perhaps not. The sister absorbs this information with a composure that frightens those around her. She has learned how to hold grief without spilling it, how to let facts land and settle, how to keep listening. An old friend of the missing man comes forward after decades of silence, bringing a cassette recorded at home, music spliced with voice. It is banal and devastating, the sound of someone practicing repairs, narrating small successes, humming between steps. At one point, the voice jokes about how signals always find a way through walls. The tape becomes an exhibit, not because it proves anything, but because it makes forgetting impossible. Pressure mounts for accountability that looks like anything. A parliamentary inquiry is announced with a start date, and a sunset clause that worries activists and comforts officials. Witness lists are negotiated. Subpoenas drafted and redrafted. The phrase national interest is invoked and contested. The case becomes a test of whether institutions can examine themselves without flinching. A breakthrough arrives from an unexpected direction. A logistics contractor reviewing old invoices notices anomalies tied to fuel deliveries on the night in question, quantities inconsistent with recorded movements. He cross-references with maintenance shutdowns and finds overlap that narrows possibilities to a single facility. The one the nurse described. The one with the drain that went nowhere. Permission to excavate is requested again, this time granted with conditions that feel like warnings. The excavation is quiet, deliberate, filmed from a distance. Layers are peeled back. Concrete gives way to older concrete. A void is discovered, not a grave but a space where something had been, an absence that speaks. Forensic teams collect samples, fibers, traces that might one day resolve into certainty or might not. The press reports cautiously. The public holds its breath. In testimony, the former mid-level officer breaks in a small way that matters. He admits to being present during a transfer. He insists he did not know the outcome. He insists he followed orders. He insists on the distance between action and consequence, a distance the room no longer accepts. When asked about the scarf, he hesitates, then says it was logged. He cannot say where. The sister watches his hands, the way they fold and unfold, and recognizes the human beneath the defenses. She feels no satisfaction, only the ache of proximity to something like truth. Afterward, she steps outside and calls no one, standing still until the city resumes around her, the case now too large to belong to any one person. The inquiry opens with solemnity and ends its first day with confusion. Testimony contradicts. Records resist alignment. Yet the shape remains, clearer now, a sequence of decisions made small enough to be deniable and large enough to destroy. Cold case has transformed into a living thing, demanding attention, refusing to be archived again. Late that night, the journalist receives a package with no return address. Inside, a photocopy of a transfer log marked resolved. The resolution date crossed out and replaced with a handwritten word. Pending. The handwriting matches the archivist's index. The implication is chilling. Someone knew the ending never arrived. As the city sleeps uneasily, sirens distant, the case advances not toward closure but toward reckoning. A process that does not promise relief, only honesty. The scarf exists now in multiple forms, artifact, image, symbol, each loop tightening around a history that can no longer pretend it does not feel the cold. The reckoning acquires a tempo of its own, uneven and relentless, driven by disclosures that arrive out of order, forcing everyone to relearn how to read time. The photocopied log marked pending becomes a fixation, its crossed-out date a wound that never scabbed, and investigators trace its circulation through hands that should not have touched it, offices that no longer exist, a paper trail designed to look accidental. The archivist is questioned again, this time under oath, and she repeats herself with the calm of someone who has carried a truth long enough for it to lose its edge. She says the word pending was a promise made to no one in particular. She says it was her way of leaving a door unlocked. The inquiry's second week fractures into camps, those who want a narrative and those who want a ledger. The former argue that stories move societies. The latter insist that numbers don't lie, only people do. Both are wrong in useful ways. A timeline is projected on a screen and then taken down because it suggests intention too clearly. When it returns softened by qualifiers, the room exhales. Maintain continuity. Keep it clean. Pending. The phrases recur like a chant that has learned to disguise itself as bureaucracy. A new witness appears with the stubbornness of someone who has decided the cost of silence now outweighs the risk of speech. He was a junior officer assigned to radio monitoring, a job that taught him to hear patterns where others heard noise. He says there was an order to reroute calls that night, to treat certain transmissions as interference. He says he followed the order and hated himself for it. He says he wrote the time down on his palm because he was afraid the logs would lie. The ink is gone, the memory remains, and the inquiry records it with a gravity that feels overdue. The sister listens from a distance, avoiding the front rows where faces are remembered and judged. She keeps her hands folded the way her brother did when concentrating, a habit that has migrated without permission. When the junior officer mentions a scarf on a chair, she closes her eyes and feels the room tilt. She does not cry. She has learned that tears are a currency others spend on her behalf. A technical addendum to the inquiry's report surfaces, dense and unapologetic, detailing how clock offsets were propagated across systems under the guise of calibration. The language is antiseptic. The implications are not. A deliberate window existed, 11 minutes wide, during which accountability thinned to vapor. The addendum is leaked, then challenged, then defended by experts who argue that design choices carry moral weight whether designers admit it or not. The phrase engineered ambiguity enters the discourse and refuses to leave. Outside, the mural becomes a site of pilgrimage. Someone adds a line beneath the scarf, small and defiant. Pending is not closed. It is scrubbed away by morning and rewritten by noon. The city negotiates its memory in public, layer by layer. A palimpsest of insistence. The excavation yields a fragment that refuses to be ordinary, a sliver of fabric caught in a seam, fibers consistent with wool treated in a way common to that era. The report is cautious, the match probabilistic, but probability has learned how to move crowds. The sister is told privately before the press. She asks to see it and is allowed a brief glance, enough to recognize the weave, the way the fibers twist. She hands it back and says thank you as if receiving a kindness. A former prosecutor from the old system publishes a memoir that reads like a preemptive defense, pages of context designed to drown a handful of decisions. He writes about pressure and fear and the necessity of order. He does not mention the case by name. Readers do it for him. The book is dissected, footnoted against reality, and found wanting. The author retreats from public view, his arguments collapsing under the weight of specificity. The inquiry requests immunity for a witness who can place the missing man inside the facility at a precise hour. The request becomes a referendum. Granting it feels like capitulation. Denying it feels like vanity. The decision is made in a room that smells of coffee and resignation. Immunity is granted with conditions that satisfy no one. The witness testifies and says what others have danced around. The man was brought in alive. He was questioned. He was moved again. He does not say where. He does not say why. He does say the scarf was taken because it could be used. Used for what, he is asked. Used to remind him where he was. The room absorbs this and does not forgive it. The sister grips the edge of her seat and thinks of winter winds cutting through streets like knives. She thinks of hands that fix delicate things. She thinks of continuity, and how it can be broken without noise. A classified appendix is declassified in part, black bars retreating like a tide. Beneath them, a map appears, lines tracing movements that were once theoretical. The route ends near a subbasement marked with a euphemism that fools no one. The absence of records after that point is conspicuous. Pending again written in the negative space. International observers weigh in, reminding the city that its past was watched and documented by others, that intelligence is a porous thing. A foreign archive releases a cable noting an unexplained transfer request that was never completed. The dates align. The implication is devastating. The man was not meant to cross. He was meant to disappear in a way that preserved deniability across borders. The journalist writes less now and listens more, letting documents stack until they threaten to topple. When a story is published, it is spare its power in the restraint. The headline avoids closure. The public responds with a seriousness that surprises even cynics. Fundraisers are organized to support further research. Law students volunteer to parse statutes. The case becomes a syllabus. In a closed session, the board votes on language that will define the next decade of discourse. The phrase state responsibility is proposed, amended, proposed again. It passes narrowly. The room exhales, then stiffens as if bracing for impact. Responsibility is a beginning, not an end, and everyone knows it. That night, the sister walks the river where bodies were once mistaken for answers. The water moves with indifference. She speaks her brother's name into the cold and hears it carried away. Pending is not closed, she thinks. It is an invitation, and the city for the first time seems willing to accept it. Responsibility changes the air, not immediately, not cleanly, but enough that people begin to speak with less caution and more precision, as if the city has agreed to trade euphemism for accuracy. The inquiry enters its most dangerous phase, the part where conclusions threaten to harden into consequences, and every institution involved feels the shift like a drop in pressure before a storm. Documents once summarized are read aloud. Names once redacted are pronounced carefully, syllable by syllable, their owners aging in real time as they listen from rooms they never expected to re-enter. A legal theory takes shape, fragile but persistent, arguing that disappearance itself can constitute an ongoing offense, that time does not absolve what time was designed to hide. Scholars debate it late into the night, citing precedents born from other walls, other regimes, other silences. The theory circulates beyond the inquiry, into courtrooms and classrooms, where it is tested and sharpened. Cold case acquires a new modifier. Active. The word lands with a quiet violence. The sister is asked to participate in a reconstruction, not a reenactment, they are careful to say, but the difference collapses the moment she steps into the taped-off space of the former facility. The walls are painted now, scrubbed of their past, but the geometry persists, corridors narrowing where they should not, corners that swallow sound. She follows the path as it has been inferred, measured, argued into existence. At one doorway she stops without knowing why. A technician checks the plan and nods. This is where the power dropped. This is where time bent. A psychologist briefs the team on memory and trauma, how the body keeps records even when the mind refuses. The sister does not need the lesson. She feels the echo in her chest, a pressure she has learned to live alongside. When asked if she wants to continue, she says yes because stopping would feel like another disappearance. The immunity witness is recalled to clarify a detail he avoided. He hesitates, then speaks with a resignation that reads like courage. He describes a moment when the man asked for water and was denied because the schedule did not allow for interruptions. He describes how denial becomes habit, how habit becomes policy. He says the questioning ended abruptly when a call came through marked priority. He does not know who was on the other end. He knows only that afterward everything accelerated. Maintain continuity became hurry up. A recording surfaces from an unexpected source. A personal answering machine recovered from a storage unit. Its tape warped but intact. It captures fragments of conversations from an adjacent office, voices unaware of being preserved. The quality is poor, the ethics murky, but the content is unmistakable. A voice jokes about overtime. Another complains about the cold. Then a third says the problem will be solved before dawn. The timestamp places it within the 11-minute window. The room that hears it falls silent. A silence that acknowledges the weight of specificity. Outside the process, the city's patience thins. Demonstrations swell, no longer asking for answers but demanding action. Counterarguments lose traction as the evidence coheres. A mayor addresses the crowd and chooses words that attempt balance and achieve neither. Trust erodes not in a rush but in a steady drip. each non-answer widening the gap. A judge agrees to hear a test case, narrow by design, aimed at establishing jurisdiction rather than guilt. The hearing is procedural, dry, but its implications ripple outward. Survivors of other cases attend, recognizing the pattern in different clothes. Cold case becomes plural. The gallery listens as lawyers argue whether absence can be proven, whether intent can be inferred, whether a state can be compelled to account for what it erased. The judge reserves decision. The waiting resumes. In the archive, a graduate student notices a misfiled photograph tucked into an unrelated folder, a snapshot of a hallway taken for maintenance records. In the corner of the frame, barely visible, a scarf hangs from a hook looped twice. The timestamp is wrong. Everything else is right. The image is authenticated, then contested, then authenticated again. It does not show a face. Does not need to. The sister receives the image alone. In a quiet room with a glass of water she does not touch. She studies the grain, the light, the shadow where a person should be. She thinks of how objects outlive their owners, how they carry stories without consent. She feels the urge to take the photograph home, to keep it, and understands why evidence must sometimes be protected from love. A senior official issues a statement acknowledging systemic failure and announcing a compensation framework. The word compensation lands poorly, a currency offered where accounting is required. The sister declines publicly, explaining that money closes books without reading them. Others follow. The framework stalls. Behind the scenes, a narrow path opens toward criminal accountability for a single act: falsification of records. It is not the crime that matters but the crack it creates. Investigators focus on the altered timestamps, the crossed-out date, the pending that never resolved. A suspect is identified, not the architect, not the executioner, but the custodian of truth who chose convenience over accuracy. He is charged quietly. The news breaks anyway. The arrest shocks the community not because it satisfies, but because it demonstrates that the past can still touch the present. The man appears in court looking small, his defense predictable. He says he followed instructions. He says he did not know. The prosecutor plays the tape. Maintain continuity. The judge listens. At night, the sister dreams of radios tuning themselves, static thinning until a voice emerges, calm and familiar. She wakes before it finishes speaking, heart racing, the dream incomplete by design. Pending is not closed, she thinks again. And this time the phrase feels less like an invitation and more like a warning. As the case advances into territory no one can fully control, the city braces for what accountability might demand, knowing that walls fall loudly, but truths fall slower, piece by piece, each one capable of changing the shape of the ground beneath their feet. The warning proves accurate, because accountability, once invited, refuses to arrive alone. The falsification charge opens a seam, and through it spill details that were once sealed by habit and fear. The custodian of truth pleads not guilty and then, faced with the weight of corroboration, amends the plea to something quieter, something transactional. In exchange for leniency, he offers a map of processes rather than places, a guide to how lies were normalized without anyone ever saying the word lie. He explains how errors were corrected forward, how omissions were framed as efficiency, how pending became a shelf where inconvenient facts were stored and forgotten. The court listens and discovers that forgetting requires maintenance. Calendars were adjusted, meetings rescheduled, language softened, a machine hummed. The judge orders a forensic audit of record-keeping practices from the period, a move that sends archivists back into basements and attics where paper waits patiently. What they find is not a smoking gun but a weather pattern, the same distortions repeating across departments, the same 11-minute pocket appearing like a bruise wherever scrutiny presses hardest. A second arrest follows, this one less quiet. A mid-level supervisor who authorized the clock offsets is charged with abuse of authority. His defense is a mirror of the first, order's necessity context. The public reacts with a mix of relief and hunger, sensing momentum and wanting more. The prosecutor cautions against expectations. This is not a purge, he says. It is a process. The word process does not soothe. The sister is asked again to speak, this time to a room full of young officers in training. She hesitates, then agrees, understanding that prevention is a form of justice that does not require permission. She tells them about listening, about the danger of small shortcuts, about how systems teach people to trade humanity for smoothness. She does not mention her brother until the end, when she says his name once and watches it settle into the room like dust in sunlight. A cache of internal memos is declassified in a tranche that feels strategic. Among them is a note referencing radio assets, with a parenthetical that clarifies it means people, not equipment. The language is jarring in its casualness. Analysts trace the memo's recipients and find overlap with the unit tied to the call sign. The network tightens. A former commander is summoned and chooses to testify rather than stonewall. He is precise, careful, and undone by his own competence. When asked about the night in question, he says operations sometimes required improvisation. When asked about continuity, he pauses. The pause is noted. A counter-narrative gains traction online, arguing that the case has become a proxy for present anxieties, that evidence is being retrofitted to satisfy contemporary morals. It is amplified by voices that benefit from exhaustion. Fact-checkers respond with documents and timelines, but emotion outruns accuracy. The city feels the strain, a tug-of-war between reckoning and retreat. In the midst of it, a small, devastating detail emerges from the answering machine tape. Engineers isolate a background sound, a rhythm that matches a specific generator model, used only in one wing of the facility. The model's maintenance logs place it offline shortly after dawn. The implication sharpens. Whatever happened concluded before daylight. The sister hears this and feels the horizon narrow. A memorial proposal reaches the city council, modest in scale, a marker near the old checkpoint listing names of those who disappeared without resolution. The debate is heated. Some argue memorials fossilize pain. Others argue they focus it. The proposal passes by a single vote. Construction is scheduled. The date chosen matters to someone, though no one admits why. The judge issues a ruling on jurisdiction, affirming that the court can hear cases where disappearance constitutes a continuing violation. The decision is dense and cautious and seismic. Legal scholars celebrate quietly. Defendants appeal loudly. The city absorbs the news with a seriousness that suggests practice, as if it has been rehearsing for this moment without knowing it. A third witness comes forward, this one a former cleaner at the facility, her role dismissed for decades as peripheral. She remembers a room that was always warmer than the rest, remembers being told not to enter, remembers a scarf folded on a sink because it was wet. She remembers thinking it odd that someone would wash a scarf in winter and then leave it behind. Her memory is not precise about dates, but precision has learned to make room for meaning. The sister meets her privately and thanks her, the gratitude flowing both ways. They sit without speaking for a long time, the silence companionable, a reminder that not all quiet is complicit. As pressure mounts, a defense attorney leaks a strategy memo suggesting the case hinges on symbolic overreach, an attempt to win the narrative rather than the law. The leak backfires. The phrase is taken up and inverted. Symbolic overreach becomes the charge leveled at those who thought symbols could substitute for accountability. Construction begins at the memorial site. Workers uncover old foundations and stop. An archaeologist is called. Nothing conclusive is found, but the pause becomes a ritual, a moment of acknowledgement that the ground holds stories whether we ask it to or not. In chambers, the judge reviews a consolidated brief linking the altered logs, the audio, the photographs, the generator rhythm, the testimonies. The pattern is undeniable. He schedules hearings that will test not just evidence but resolve. The calendar fills. The city counts days again. Late one evening, the sister receives a message from an unknown number. Contains a single sentence. He asked about the radio one last time. No signature. No explanation. She deletes it and then retrieves it from the trash, knowing that some fragments are too important to lose even if they hurt. Cold case has become a misnomer. The case is hot now, volatile, capable of burning those who get too close. And yet, beneath the heat, there is a steadiness, a sense that the long arc has begun to bend not toward closure, but toward something more honest, a reckoning that insists on daylight and refuses the comfort of forgetting. The reckoning intensifies as the hearings begin, each day stretching longer than the last, each testimony layering over the next like sediment, slowly revealing the terrain beneath decades of concealment. The courtroom is packed, every seat taken, the air heavy with expectation and fatigue. Cameras line the perimeter, capturing the smallest gestures, twitches, glances, micro-expressions that reveal more than words ever could. The custodian of truth sits quietly, hands folded, eyes fixed on the floor. He has become both key and cipher, a single node through which the entire narrative pulses. Witnesses are called in succession. Each adds a layer of texture. A routine overlooked, a report misfiled, a command repeated without questioning. The language is technical, clinical, precise, but the story it constructs is devastatingly human. When the former junior officer speaks, his hands shake, a tremor he tries to hide but cannot. He recalls the routing of transmissions, the rerouting of responsibility, the 11-minute window that became a corridor of disappearance. He pauses and admits he still cannot reconcile his actions with the consequences. The room listens, tense, absorbing the weight of accountability delayed by decades. The sister is present for every session, silent but alert. She does not flinch at the technical jargon, does not gasp at the admissions, does not react to the descriptions of fear, cold, and absence. Instead, she catalogs them internally, mapping them onto memory, creating her own chronology where others have failed. When she hears the mention of the scarf, she feels its presence, the looped wool almost tangible in the courtroom. She imagines it lying forgotten, its fibers holding fragments of a life suspended in time. Legal debates rage around the definitions of disappearance, jurisdiction, and state responsibility. Scholars testify, dissecting precedent, explaining how statutes intersect with human rights frameworks, how absence can constitute ongoing harm. One argues that continuity is an ethical imperative, that small acts of omission cascade into violations as tangible as physical injury. Another warns that the law must not retroactively punish complexity, that nuance cannot be sacrificed to moral outrage. The tension between clarity and complication dominates the room. A technical team presents a reconstruction of the facility's layout during the critical night, its corridors and compartments mapped in 3D, audio and lighting simulations replayed for the court. The 11-minute window is animated, showing the precise timing of doors opening and closing, of signals routed and blocked. The effect is chilling. Absence rendered visible, time made concrete. Members of the jury lean forward, some exchanging quick, concerned glances. The courtroom feels like the intersection of engineering and conscience. Outside, the city holds its own trials of sentiment. Streets hum with discussion. Citizens form groups to study the emerging records. Debate clubs examine documents, timeline charts, and photographs, attempting to piece together an understanding of what systemic failure can look like. Tourists walk past murals of the scarf and checkpoint, unaware of the depth of the history painted in broad strokes. Protesters and observers coexist, alternating chants and whispered conversations. Memory is public now, unavoidable. A surprising turn occurs when the former commander admits knowledge of the clock offsets, describing the orders he gave and the rationale behind them. He frames his actions as compliance with necessity, but in the silence that follows, necessity seems hollow. He is precise, almost eerily calm, and yet the implication is unavoidable. Design and oversight conspired to render a man unaccounted for, to leave continuity as the only witness. The sister hears the words, feels them settle in her chest like cold stone, and refuses to blink. The journalist covering the hearings notices an anomaly in the transcripts, a line that appears in multiple testimonies but nowhere in the official log. A mention of a corridor previously unrecorded, an area outside oversight. He follows the lead, finding a maintenance memo that references the same space, labeled innocuously as storage extension. When cross-referenced with the generator rhythm, the implication is precise and unsettling. The missing man's path through the building can be traced, almost in real time, except for the final moments. The last steps remain unaccounted for. A void the city cannot map. The court pauses to review a recovered audio cassette, damaged but telling. Voices are faint, instructions pass quietly, words overlapping like overlapping shadows. One voice says, maintain continuity. Another confirms, repeating the call sign. Then a pause. The final snippet contains only a sound, a door shutting. The recording ends abruptly, leaving a silence that fills the room like a tangible presence. For some, the silence is unbearable. For others, it is confirmation of the methodical, human cruelty embedded in procedural indifference. During recess, the sister steps outside the courthouse. The winter air bites at her cheeks, the wind carrying a memory of streets where he once walked. She closes her eyes and imagines the movements, the waiting, the noises, the deliberate gaps in observation. Pending is not closed, she realizes once more. Pending has become a pulse, a rhythm in the city itself. She does not speak. She cannot. She listens and the wind answers. Back inside, evidence of financial irregularities is introduced. Post-reunification payments labeled as pensions, irregular disbursements suggesting hush money. The courtroom murmurs, the implications slicing through decades of assumed propriety. The combination of testimonies, audio evidence, and financial documents coalesces into an undeniable mosaic of accountability. Officials who once considered themselves untouchable now feel the pressure, as the case presses forward not just against individuals, but against a system that normalized absence. A forensic examination of fabric fragments recovered from the facility confirms that the fibers match the wool scarf. While circumstantial, the evidence is potent. It is physical confirmation that a presence once existed, that the missing man's world was real and tangible, and that someone deliberately severed its continuity. The sister receives the report in private. She touches the fibers carefully, feeling the weight of decades, and folds them into a protective envelope. The texture, the smell, the weave, all are a testament to survival through memory. At night, the city itself seems awake, restless. Streetlights flicker in patterns that mimic the hurried steps of the missing man, as if the urban grid remembers, as if continuity cannot be erased entirely. Reports of leaks, fragments, and whistleblowers emerge sporadically, each adding clarity, each revealing gaps, each demanding attention. The case has become alive, unpredictable, a mechanism for truth that operates independently of anyone's wishes. The sister dreams of corridors that twist and stretch, of clocks whose hands move backward, of whispers repeating in multiple voices simultaneously. She wakes before the dream resolves, heart pounding, knowing that the case has entered a rhythm she cannot control but can follow. Pending is not closed. Pending will not close until the city, and all its instruments of memory and accountability, chooses to see what was hidden and to carry it forward with the respect it deserves. The hearings resume at dawn, tension tangible in every gesture. The missing man's absence dominates the space, shaping every testimony, every argument, every pause. Cold Case has become a living narrative, one that refuses to be archived neatly. Each detail, no matter how small, is now a thread in a tapestry that spans decades, linking bureaucracy, human error, and deliberate omission. Continuity has become both evidence and witness, and the city watches, holds its breath, and listens. The hearings stretch into their third month, the air inside the courtroom heavy with the fatigue of attention, the strain of comprehension, the pressure of memory made present. Each morning begins with a review of the prior day's testimony, as though repeating aloud will solidify the past into law. Witnesses shuffle papers, tap microphones, adjust glasses, but the narrative refuses to be tamed. Every name, every timestamp, every procedural note carries weight now, like small avalanches ready to shift with a single misstep. The sister sits in the back row, her hands folded, her gaze steady, absorbing both the evidence and the atmosphere of revelation. Pending remains a mantra, a rhythm in her chest that beats louder with each disclosure. A forensic audio specialist presents a spectral analysis of the tapes recovered from the answering machines, highlighting frequencies imperceptible to the human ear. The court listens to the playback, first normal speed, then slowed, revealing footsteps, creaks, a subtle hum of a generator. Every sound accounted for in a window 11 minutes wide. The specialist pauses on a faint click, a door secured or unsecured, a presence that can neither be verified nor dismissed. The silence that follows is heavier than any testimony. In that pause, the missing man's last movements are reconstructed, partial but undeniable, a choreography of absence that demands acknowledgement. Financial records are revisited. Subtle irregularities from decades past are now framed in the language of intent. Transfers mislabeled, reimbursements duplicated, expenses coded in obfuscation. Analysts testify on how small bureaucratic manipulations become instruments of concealment. Each misfiled ledger, each ambiguous notation, is a reminder that systems designed to preserve continuity can also manufacture absence. The jury leans forward. The sister listens without flinching, cataloging the deliberate architecture of erasure and the courage it takes to admit complicity, even after time has worn everyone down. A surprise witness is called. A former engineer who installed the communication systems, now elderly, with hands shaking slightly as he lifts diagrams and blueprints. He traces the path of signals across the facility, pointing to each node, each potential point of interception. His testimony clarifies how 11 minutes of misalignment could have been engineered deliberately, not as an error, but as a feature of operational design. Maintain continuity, he repeats, echoing a phrase that now resonates like an indictment. When asked whether anyone could have been overlooked, he hesitates, then admits that gaps were inevitable, and in that inevitability, some people were effectively erased from observation. Outside, the city's response is muted but persistent. Activists organize nightly vigils at the checkpoint murals. A lone scarf appears tied to a lamppost, looped twice, replaced each morning by new visitors. Murals expand to include fragments of audio transcripts, copies of memos, photos of logs. The public's engagement evolves from curiosity into ritual. Remembrance as resistance. Demonstrations alternate with quiet reflection, each act a reminder that pending is not closed, and that memory cannot be fully delegated to official archives. Legal debates focus now on definitions of continuity and disappearance, on whether administrative oversight can constitute harm when human lives are at stake. Scholars argue furiously, quoting precedents from other regimes, other walls, other absences. One notes that disappearance in the digital era is often traceable, yet in this pre-digital case, absence itself became the proof of systemic failure. Another warns against retroactive moral judgment, insisting that complexity must be respected. The jury, caught between precision and morality, listens with the intensity of those learning history in real time. The sister meets privately with a former cleaner who recalls more details. The scarf left folded on a sink, the sound of keys rattling, an unusual warmth in a corridor where no heating was scheduled. Her memory is fragmentary, but it corroborates existing evidence. The sister thanks her quietly, understanding that these minor details, folded into the archive of testimony, carry disproportionate weight. Absence becomes presence through their combined recollections. A whistleblower surfaces, a former clerk from the archival department, offering original records that had been misplaced decades earlier. The documents, yellowed but legible, detail transfers of responsibility, notes marked pending, and a cryptic reference to special handling required. Analysts cross-check with known timelines and confirm correlations that make previous reconstructions more precise. Each recovered document strengthens the narrative, yet also deepens the mystery. The ultimate outcome remains unresolved, the 11-minute gap still impenetrable. The court receives physical evidence. Fragments of the wool scarf recovered from the facility, fibers analyzed and matched to other recovered items. The forensic team emphasizes the probabilistic nature of the match, yet the emotional impact is undeniable. The scarf, once mundane, now embodies continuity, memory, and deliberate concealment. The sister holds it briefly, feeling decades of absence compressed into a tangible object. She returns it to custody, recognizing that it now serves as evidence of both loss and proof. Media coverage intensifies. Headlines balance facts with emotion. Berlin Wall-era cold case advances. Pending not closed. Family demands truth. Evidence emerges in long-forgotten disappearance. The city cannot escape the narrative. It pulses through daily life. Conversations at cafes, offices, and transit stops reference procedural gaps, missing men, and the architecture of absence. Citizens absorb the case collectively. A shared reckoning that merges memory with documentation. The inquiry's technical reconstruction is revisited in court. Digital simulations overlay structural schematics with audio timelines, highlighting potential moments where human error or deliberate omission occurred. The 11-minute window is animated in color-coded frames. Red for unknown movement, yellow for confirmed signal gaps, green for procedural oversight. Observers note the tension in the visualization. Time itself appears compressed, folded, manipulated. The sister watches, absorbing every detail, feeling the rhythm of absence as if it were her own heartbeat. Late at night, after the day's hearings conclude, the sister walks alone along the old checkpoint, tracing familiar streets, feeling the shadow of his movements in her steps. She imagines the pending moments of the night he disappeared, the spaces no one recorded, the silence that bore witness. She whispers his name, letting it mingle with wind and memory, understanding that closure is not an endpoint but a process, a continual negotiation between absence, accountability, and recognition. The cold case is alive, still unresolved in some dimensions, but illuminated in others, and the city, and she herself, feels the shift. Pending is not closed. It cannot be closed. It is alive, a pulse, a call, a responsibility that stretches across decades, insisting that the truth, however incomplete, be witnessed. The courtroom is quiet, almost unbearably so, as the final witnesses are called. The weight of decades presses down on the proceedings like a physical force, making every breath deliberate, every movement significant. The sister sits rigid, her fingers intertwined, knuckles pale against the leather of her coat. Outside, the city moves on as it always does, oblivious to the precise choreography of absence unfolding within the courthouse walls. But inside, every second hums with the energy of accumulated memory. The last witness is a former archivist, older now, who carries the authority of experience and the tremor of decades of secrecy. She testifies about the pending files, the misfiled documents, the deliberate gaps that were never meant to be reconstructed. Her voice is measured, calm, but the implication resonates with a clarity that is almost painful. The disappearance was not accidental. It was managed, curated, a void engineered to preserve a system, a state, and a story that did not include the man who vanished. She pauses, then adds, almost in a whisper, that the scarf, the cables, the logs, they were all part of a language meant to speak only to those who already knew. The jury leans forward, captivated, unsettled. Legal teams present the final arguments. Prosecutors outline the architecture of absence, emphasizing continuity and deliberate omission, connecting lines between altered timestamps, misdirected reports, and the 11-minute window. Defense lawyers counter, framing the events as products of systemic confusion and procedural necessity. They argue over semantics, jurisdiction, and intention. The debate is rigorous, combative, yet beneath it lies a tension that no legal term can fully contain. The human cost of disappearance, measured now not only in lost time but in the absence itself, the silence that has defined decades. The sister rises to give her statement. She does not speak of guilt or blame. She speaks of memory, of what it means to witness absence, of the duty owed to those who are no longer here to speak for themselves. Her voice is steady, resolute, and in it there is no plea for vengeance, only a call for acknowledgement. She describes her brother not as a case, not as evidence, but as a life once vibrant, interrupted, suspended. The court listens. The silence that follows is heavy, almost sacred. Outside, journalists report on every nuance. Headlines are precise, factual, and careful, yet even they cannot capture the undercurrent of tension and revelation. Berlin Wall-era cold case nears resolution. Final testimonies reveal systematic absence. City confronts legacy of disappearance. Social media threads pulse with speculation, remembrance, and commentary. Citizens debate not only the law but the ethical imperative to remember, to reconstruct, to honor absence. Pending has become a living concept, a rhythm felt in discussion, in reflection, in collective memory. A final forensic analysis is presented in court. Fibers, photographs, audio recordings, timestamps, and technical diagrams converge to provide an unprecedented reconstruction of the missing man's last known movements. The 11-minute window is now understood as both a literal gap and a symbolic pivot point, where human decisions intersected with systems to produce absence. Experts testify about how minor deviations in procedure can have catastrophic consequences, about how continuity, once broken, leaves traces that endure indefinitely. The sister absorbs it all, knowing that these fragments are all she can hold of him, yet they are enough to witness what must never be forgotten. The judge delivers instructions to the jury, emphasizing that their deliberations will not create perfect closure, cannot rewrite decades, but can assign responsibility where it exists and clarify facts where they are discernible. The room hums with the tension of anticipation, every observer aware that the outcome, whatever it may be, will reshape collective understanding of the past. Pending in this moment has taken on the weight of history itself. In chambers, the jury reviews the evidence again and again. The logs, the tapes, the fibers, the testimonies, they are not a story to be closed but a tapestry to be acknowledged. They debate over intention, omission, and accountability, realizing that closure will not arrive neatly, that some truths are irreducible, and that absence itself is an enduring presence. Each member of the jury carries fragments of history, tasked with interpreting what cannot be fully seen, reconstructing what was deliberately hidden. As deliberations continue, the sister returns to the checkpoint murals. The city is quiet at this hour, but the wind carries the echo of footsteps she imagines as her brother's. She lays a single scarf upon a small plaque erected in his honor. The fibers are soft, worn, but unmistakable. A witness to the past, a statement that pending is not merely a status but a lived reality. She does not speak. She does not need to. The city for a brief moment listens. The verdict is delivered the following day. Accountability is assigned in part, not complete, but enough to fracture the illusion that the past is untouchable. The custodian of truth is convicted on charges of record falsification. Others are reprimanded, some exonerated. The law does not close the pending entirely, but it establishes that absence carries consequences. The sister hears the decision, her body relaxing slightly yet still taut with unresolved grief. She knows the case is not over, not entirely, but recognition has arrived, tangible, official, and irrevocable. Later, she walks along the river, tracing the route he once might have taken, imagining the gaps, the silence, the moments unrecorded. She whispers his name into the wind, a mantra of memory, a ritual of acknowledgement. Pending is not closed, she reflects, yet in its persistence there is power. The truth has been partially reconstructed, the absence has been witnessed, and the city itself has learned to carry its memory forward. The cold case has ended in law, but not in loss. It remains alive in remembrance, in testimony, in the ongoing pulse of accountability. And in that quiet endurance, she finds the faintest measure of peace. The city exhales, but only slightly, a measured release after decades of tension. Courtroom doors close, reporters pack up, and yet the echo of absence lingers in every corridor, every street, every corner where time once faltered. The sister walks through the city with the quiet attention of someone tracing shadows. She notices cracks in the pavement, lampposts, and windows reflecting a history that refuses to be erased. Pending is no longer just a word. It is a rhythm, a pulse she carries inside her, intertwined with memory, grief, and resilience. Investigators continue their work behind closed doors, cross-referencing old records with new testimonies, aligning fragmented logs, and updating the procedural map of that fateful night. Every recovered detail is like a brushstroke on a canvas too large to be fully appreciated at once. Analysts note the gaps, the anomalies, the patterns, and in doing so, they create a collective memory of what was hidden, and what must never be hidden again. Even in the absence of the missing man, the architecture of accountability is taking shape, brittle but real. A final piece of evidence surfaces, a set of letters previously overlooked, exchanged between mid-level supervisors at the time of the disappearance. They are mundane on the surface. Memos about scheduling, requests for authorization, routine reports. Yet within the margins, almost invisible, are annotations, corrections, and instructions that suggest awareness of the unfolding situation. Forensic linguists and historians examine the handwriting, the phrasing, the tone, confirming that the correspondence documents an institutional consciousness of the absence and a deliberate attempt to maintain continuity while leaving someone unaccounted for. The city reacts quietly but with gravity. The letters are circulated in the media, becoming symbols of both negligence and intention. The sister is shown the letters. She runs her fingers over the yellowed paper, feeling the texture, the ink, the human hand behind what was once an unseen decision. She does not speak, cannot speak, but in her silence there is recognition that those who disappeared are remembered not only in evidence but in the very act of witnessing, in the meticulous reconstruction of what was meant to vanish. Pending, she realizes, is also an act of survival, for memory, for truth, for those left behind. Memorials take shape across the city, modest in scale, but monumental in significance. Plaques, murals, small exhibitions of recovered evidence, personal testimonies, and photographs of what remains, a scarf, a map, a schematic, appear in public spaces. People come to observe, reflect, and sometimes leave offerings. A single flower, a note, a candle flickering in the wind. The city's rhythm adjusts slightly, a tacit acknowledgement that absence has weight, and that recognition can serve as both justice and remembrance. Meanwhile, the legal framework established by the hearings becomes precedent. Courts across the country reference the Berlin Wall-era cold case when discussing long-term disappearances, institutional accountability, and the legal meaning of pending. Scholars publish papers on continuity as evidence, on absence as testimony, and on how historical systems of concealment can be unraveled decades later. The sister follows these developments quietly, recognizing that the impact of her brother's disappearance now stretches far beyond the city, beyond herself, shaping discourse, law, and memory across a wider world. One evening, she returns to the checkpoint site. The wind carries fragments of conversations from decades past, imagined or real, mingling with the city's hum. She lays the recovered scarf on a plaque once more, looping it twice, precisely as it was left all those years ago. She steps back, observing the space where history and memory converge. The colors of the murals, the shadows of the lamps, the outline of the facility in her mind, all blend into a tableau that is both haunting and affirming. Absence has been acknowledged, even if not fully erased. In her private reflections, the sister understands that closure is partial and layered. The case has ended in law but not in life, not in memory, not in the ongoing pulse of the city. The 11-minute gap will never be fully reconstructed. The decisions and omissions of the past remain partially obscured, but the structures of truth, accountability, and remembrance have been fortified. Pending is transformed from a liminal state into a living principle, to bear witness, to recognize absence, and to honor those who cannot speak for themselves. As the sun sets over the river, casting long shadows along the old checkpoint streets, the sister feels the weight of decades lift slightly, replaced by a tempered vigilance. She walks slowly, deliberately, carrying both grief and resilience, knowing that absence still breathes but that acknowledgement, official, communal, personal, is now inseparable from memory. Pending is not closed, she repeats silently, but it is alive. In that aliveness is both sorrow and hope, a testament to survival, witness, and the enduring insistence of truth. The city lights flicker on, illuminating the murals, the memorials, the plaques. Each one is a pulse of recognition. Each one affirms that while disappearance may shape history, accountability and remembrance shape the present. The Berlin Wall-era cold case, once a story of loss and silence, has become a story of endurance, of reconstruction, of the capacity of memory and justice to reclaim what was almost lost. Pending is not closed, but it continues, resolute, undeniable, and quietly, infinitely alive.